What's up, guys? Nathan Burnett, episode 78. It is good to be back. I've recently just got back from vacation, so I hope you guys enjoyed the videos that were uploaded while I was gone. Those videos being the Popovich video and the Cavaliers video. So if you guys have not checked those out yet, go ahead and check those out. Again, those were uploaded and edited all that in advance, so hopefully you enjoyed it. But I am happy to be back and talk about basketball. So today we're going to talk about March Madness stuff, some playoff prediction stuff, things like that. Since I've been gone, I haven't had the opportunity to talk about March Madness yet, and I'm fired up to talk about it. But before we get into that, just a few announcements as always to start everything off. First of all, always go ahead and check out the merch if you have not already. Link's going to be down in the description below. As well as randomly in every podcast video, we are going to drop a discount code in the episode. So make sure you check out the full episode and watch all the way through so you guys can check the discount codes because you never know where in the episode it's going to be. And also, I want to change things up a little bit. So in order to sort of help foster this community here and sort of grow things, I want to be more engaged with you guys. I've had a Discord going for a while, which is in the description, and I encourage you guys to join that because I try and be active in there whenever other people are active in there. So if we get a lot of people joining in there, then I'll definitely be shooting the shit with you guys. But along with that, I also want to sort of do live watch parties of games with you guys. So I know Clan does a similar thing. Things like that. And so I want you guys to, besides just the podcast, be able to get sort of my live reactions to some games. So I think I have a way to set that up, and that'll probably be once a month, once every other month, if I can figure it out. I don't want to do it too often because it may conflict with my scheduling of other things. I still have to have time to work, edit, and upload my normal videos like the podcast and everything. And then also work on my other projects like my indie game. So I'm going to try and do once a month if I can. But all of those announcements, things like that, discount codes as well, and when we'll be doing live watch parties, etc., those are going to be posted over on my Instagram and Twitter. So go check those out. Those are also in the description, so make sure to follow me over on there. And I think that's pretty much all the announcements I have. Just going to be doing live watch parties to engage with you guys more, and go check out the merch. So with that said, I'm going to start with NBA playoff predictions first because I know that's sort of the more relevant thing. But don't worry, we're going to get into March Madness. So I'm going to pull up my notes on my phone because we live in the 21st century. So I'm not like Skip Bayless or anybody like that who has paper notes. But if you guys would prefer that, let me know. But I have all my notes right here. That's why I look down at my phone. But I want to go and talk about playoff predictions, the play-in, things like that. Because I do think there are a lot of teams that are going to surprise some people. So for the West with the play-in, I definitely think obviously the Sacramento Kings are going to overtake the Mavs because that gets into the whole Luka trade, everything like that. We've already discussed that at length in my own Nathan Burnett episodes, Shot Clock Talks with CJ, everything like that. So I don't want to get into the whole Luka trade situation talk again, but definitely Kings light the beam. But then they have to go up against OKC. So I feel like OKC is going to sweep them, to be completely honest. Maybe the Kings get one game, but I highly doubt it. I've talked several times before. They had the De'Aaron Fox trade happen. They fired Mike Brown. They traded for DeMar DeRozan. Then they got Zach LaVine on top of that to basically just become the Bulls again. And it's just not going to work out. They definitely should have kept Mike Brown. They were building something special there. They completely dismantled it. Again, I've gone on huge rants about this before, so you can go check out other videos. But yeah, I don't see the Kings really standing a chance, unfortunately. And then with the other play-in, I do think the Warriors will overtake the Grizzlies just because they have the addition of Jimmy Butler now. We're going to have playoff Jimmy and playoff Curry together. So they don't have Klay Thompson now, things like that. It honestly just depends on how well Draymond Green does. If Draymond Green gets a bunch of fouls, gets technicals, whatever the case is, and can actually play as a power forward and get rebounds and do what his job is supposed to be. But then the Warriors go up against the Rockets. Now, I think the Rockets are going to surprise a lot of people. And they are the 2 seed, so maybe people don't really see it as surprising necessarily. But the Rockets are one of those teams that basically was the Pistons, where they were bottom of the conference for so long, and then they got a new coach, and all of a sudden they're the 2 seed, and they're doing amazing now. So I do think that it's going to be a good series. I don't know for sure yet if I'm going to take the Warriors or the Rockets. There is a rivalry there with the Warriors and Rockets already. The Rockets are the 2 seed, but again, we're going to have playoff Jimmy on the Warriors, and playoff Jimmy, when he was with the Heat, upset the Celtics and took an 8th seed to the finals. So I'm not really sure how that's all going to play out. I do think it'll be a good series. It'll definitely be like a 6 or 7 game series, even with the Warriors being the 7th seed. But I do think it's going to be a great series, and the Rockets will surprise some people. Even with everything going on in the NBA, all the controversies and complaints that people have had about the All-Star game, about trades, whatever it may be, we are geared up for an exciting playoffs this year, because every single series, to me it seems, can go either way. Maybe not all of them, but a decent amount of the series I feel like could really go for 7 games, go either which way, and I love that. That's good basketball. So with the hang on, sorry. So yeah, winner of the 9-10 faces the loser of 7-8. So then it'd be Kings versus Grizzlies. I think the Kings can beat the Grizzlies, face the Thunder, get swept, and then it's Warriors versus Rockets. Then we have Lakers versus Timberwolves. I think the Lakers will obviously win there. I do not think that it will be as close, as dominating as people expect. People think that LeBron and Luka now together will completely go on a run to the finals and just be absolutely unstoppable, and it's the end of story. The Lakers win instantly, no contest. I don't think that's the case. The Timberwolves did get rid of Karl Anthony Towns, which has been an issue. But looking at the advanced stats, they're still decent in defensive rating. And I focus on defensive rating specifically because that was my mindset last year, was defense wins championships. And everyone doubted me about the Timberwolves upsetting the Nuggets in 7 games, and then they ended up doing it. So I want to take that same mentality and say that the Lakers-Timberwolves series will go to 7 games. And I don't know if I take the Lakers or the Timberwolves. I'm really stuck on that. Again, I think that series can go either way, just like I was saying with exciting playoffs. So just for the sake of the memes for now, I will go ahead and take the Timberwolves in 7 the same way I took Timberwolves in 7 over the Nuggets for now. Now, am I going to be super shocked if the Lakers win? No. Um, However, if the Lakers or Timberwolves go to the next round, I do have the Clippers beating the Nuggets. Because if the Clippers can play the way they did against the Warriors, I know I gave a lot of shit to Harden. I gave a lot of shit to the Clippers. But if they can play the way that they did against the Warriors, it'll, yeah, it's going to be insane. I think the Clippers can beat the Nuggets in 7 games. I've seen Jokic, amazing player. Jokic deserves MVP. But I've done many videos, many rants about how the rest of the team is letting Jokic down. And I just don't think that Jokic will have the stamina in these playoffs the same way he did not have the stamina against the Timberwolves. And just like against the Timberwolves, I think his team will let him down when Jokic is tired, just like they have this entire regular season. And I think the Clippers can honestly do it in 6 or 7 games. Now, call it a hot take, call it whatever you want. That is my thought process. Now, I do think whoever wins the Lakers Timberwolves will beat the Clippers, because I don't think the Clippers have that deep playoff stamina either. Kawhi always has some sort of injury on the horizon. Harden is Harden. Again, he's getting older. That whole thing that I've talked about again multiple times. I don't think the Clippers have the stamina after beating the Nuggets to beat whatever team is next. So that leaves the whoever wins the Lakers Timberwolves versus whoever wins whoever wins Rockets versus Lakers Timberwolves don't have to face Clippers. My bad. I take all that back. I read the bracket wrong. So the Thunder are going to have to face whoever wins Nuggets Clippers. So same thing applies though. Thunder, obviously, number 1 seed, and I don't think the Clippers have the stamina to beat whatever team wins the Thunder 8th seed, who obviously is going to be the Thunder. I mean, come on. So I'm just going to say the Thunder. Clippers don't have the stamina to go up against the Thunder. So then it becomes the Thunder versus whoever wins the Rockets Warriors series versus whoever wins the Lakers Timberwolves series. That's going to be interesting. Let's say, for the sake of argument, playoff Jimmy upsets the Rockets. So then we have Warriors versus the Timberwolves. I think the Timberwolves take that just slightly. Or do I? That's another difficult choice. Timberwolves or Warriors? I think either way, though, that they're going to have to play the Thunder, and then the Thunder have a decent shot. Let's say, just for the sake of, just to humor it a little bit, let's say that the Warriors win, and it's Thunder versus Warriors. Thunder versus Warriors would be a really good matchup. And then we have... You know what? No, let's go Timberwolves, because I want to see the Timberwolves in the finals, because I had the Timberwolves in the finals last year, and they didn't make it, and I'm kind of bummed about that. So, just for the sake of myself, I honestly don't really have much faith in the Timberwolves to make it to the finals, but I'm just gonna say, for the memes, let's put the Timberwolves in the finals. So then for the East, to make things simple, I have the Cavs going all the way to the finals. I mean, that's the easy choice. But this isn't any bandwagon BS. This isn't, Cavs are the number 1 seed. It's the easy pick. I have been hyping up the Cavaliers for years. I said if they're healthy, they are a championship team, and they're healthy, and they look like a championship team. So it's as simple as that. They've been dealing with injuries. They've been dealing with everybody telling them to trade their players. But I think that the Cavaliers have a really decent shot this year. And so I'm putting them on the straight path to the finals. The only thing they're going to have to work on is the same thing I talked about for the West. They're going to have to make sure that they have that stamina to make it through each team. But one big thing that I think the Cavaliers have worked on to have this success is working as a team. And so I think they will have that stamina because if one player starts to get tired, another player can step up. And that's exactly what they've worked on this entire regular season. And that's really going to be their strength in these playoffs. For the play-in, we have the Bulls versus the Heat. I have the Bulls here just because I think Kobe White can go off. Josh Giddey, even with all of his allegations and everything, has been playing really, really well. So I think the Bulls take that. And then they have to play the loser of the 7th and 8th seed, which I think will be the Hawks. So Bulls versus Hawks. It's a difficult choice because the Hawks have had decent defense this year. But I did a whole video on the Hawks and how they sort of seem to just finish at 500 every year. So I think I'm going to have to edge out the Bulls a little bit over the Hawks and put the Hawks at the 8th seed. I think the Magic as well are going to surprise a lot of people. I take the Magic at the 7th seed. The only problem is, as the 7th seed, they're going to have to face the Celtics immediately after. I don't think that the Magic can upset the Celtics for obvious reasons, but I do think the Magic can surprise a lot of people. I think the Magic can probably make it a 6-game series, and everybody imagines that the Celtics are probably going to sweep the Magic. I think it's going to be a decent 6-game series. Maybe 5-game series. Maybe 6 is a little too generous, but it's going to be a good series. Then we have the Celtics versus whoever wins the Knicks Pistons. I think that the Pistons will also do a pretty good job. I don't know if I have the Pistons winning just because they don't have the playoff experience over these past few years. And that goes with Cade and everybody else. But I do think that they can make it a long series. Just like the Magic and the Celtics, I think it can be a 6 or 7 game series. We have Pacers Bucks. I have the Pacers there in 5 just because the Bucks, when you have a coach of Darvin Ham and Doc Rivers, you're ultimately just doomed. So, I mean, it can honestly turn into the meme with Doc Rivers. Like, the Bucks can get a 3-1 lead, and then the Pacers somehow win it. So then we have Cavs versus Pacers. I have Cavaliers, again, as I said. And then we have Knicks, probably in 7 versus the Celtics. I'm probably going to have to take Celtics in 6 or 7. So then it'd be Celtics, Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals, which is pretty much what everybody expected. So then we have Cavaliers in finals versus the Timberwolves. And the Cavaliers will be able to win a championship in 5 games over the Timberwolves for a championship without LeBron. So I know that was a lot of me speaking. I mean, that's kind of what the point of a podcast is. But I explained each of my takes. And what I mean to say is, even though that was a lot of me talking audioly, I will put up a visual for what my bracket will be, and I'm going to post it over on Instagram as well. So once again, go follow me on Instagram. I'm going to be posting more stuff there, posting it on Twitter as well, all that good stuff. And if you guys disagree with my takes or agree with my takes or have any discussion that you guys want to talk about, go ahead and either leave it down in the comments or, once again, follow me and talk to me on there, or join the Discord and you can talk to me on the Discord. And throughout some of these different podcast episodes, if more people join the Discord, I might take live calls where like people can join the Discord and I'll drag people in and they can give their takes every now and then. So go and again, join that Discord, please. It's going to be a lot of fun if we get some people to join. So now we can dive in to the March Madness issue. I don't even really want to go through the brackets me and my girlfriend made. Maybe I'll put them on screen here in editing, but it was like there's not even anything to talk about in regards to our brackets. It was practically 0 upsets, and that really alludes to a bigger problem, which is the transfer portal, which is a huge discussion and why I was so fired up to talk about it. Because as so many people have said before, the accusation that the transfer portal is destroying March Madness and college sports. And I honestly am inclined to agree with that. It's simply just sad what's happening. And it's just when you look at the numbers and what's happening, it's just on such a colossal level, just fundamentally broken. And there are ways to improve it that just are not being taken, which is frustrating, because even with it sounding extreme to say, this could be the death of college sports. March Madness is one of the largest sports events, just behind things like the Super Bowl and, you know, the World Cup, things like that. Obviously, those sporting events are going to be massive. But March Madness is arguably larger than the NBA playoffs. It is by far definitely one of the biggest basketball events. It's one of the biggest NCAA events that the NCAA dumps money into in terms of advertising, marketing, making it exciting, things like that. And so losing March Madness is going to be a massive blow to sports, to just basketball, to the NCAA. It's a big deal. And the transfer portal has made it so easy for players to just sort of get up and leave. And that's disheartening because it feels like there's sort of no loyalty to go around anymore. And there have been articles that have talked about that, saying that players are compartmentalizing themselves, that they don't really care about necessarily winning with the team they're on anymore, because as soon as they lose, they can pack their bags up and leave, which is exactly what's happening. Now, aside from the transfer portal, this has obviously been a huge deal with coaches. Even before the transfer portal was created, this was an issue with coaches. And so people can say, well, how is this any different from a college seeing a good coach with a smaller school and picking up that coach? Well, in that case, it's not really the players, it's not the coach's decision to just pack up their bags and go. It's a much more thorough process of the coach has to prove himself to be a winner, has to be interviewed for the job, all these different things, rather than just applying to be hired at that college and instantly transferring over, right? If obviously like Duke, UNC, these blue bloods, these huge schools like Florida, whoever, have decent coaches like already and they're winning, why would they want to pick up a 16 seed coach? Even if the coach is shown to be doing a good job upsetting teams, working on defense, whatever it may be. They don't need that coach right now. They already have their number 1 seed coach. And so it's a different process than the transfer portal makes it. Because with the transfer portal, the other colleges can sort of scout these individual players that may not necessarily be on a winning team but have good stats. And it creates a whole issue again with loyalty, not just to the college itself, but also your teammates in the locker room. And it becomes a huge deal, right? So I have some of the numbers pulled up. And this is why I was so fired up about this, because there was a player that, let me pull it up, requested a trade. Vanderbilt freshman point guard Karis Bilal has entered the transfer agent. This was 14 minutes, I believe, was what they said. 14 minutes after the game ended, he was in the transfer portal. And I saw some comments, people talking about it as being like, well, he was already a red shirt to begin with. He was a walk-on. That decision was made before the game, not because they lost. And I will give some validity to that. That is a decent piece of the argument. But 14 minutes after the game is crazy to me. And what's even crazier is that's not even the fastest time that someone entered the transfer portal. Scottie Pippen's son, while at Michigan, entered the transfer portal while a game was still ongoing. Be for real right now. He entered the transfer portal as the game was going. If that were to happen in any other sport or on any other level, if it was in the NBA, that would be headlines everywhere. They'd be fined for tampering. There'd be fines everywhere for tampering, especially. I want you to imagine that situation with not college, but again, like the NBA or another level. Let's say that let's just say Luka, because he's the one that everybody's talking about now. Let's say during a Lakers game, Luka gets a call to be like, hey, do you want to come back to Dallas, or whatever the case is? Or let me think of another example. Because with that, Luka may not want to go back to Dallas because, like, they betrayed him and all that. So, I don't know. Let's say KD, right? KD gets a call from the Warriors. Hey, KD, you want to come back to the Warriors? Win a chip with Curry and Jimmy Butler? You know, we can create another super team. Do you think that KD, while he gets the call, while playing in a game for the Suns, is going to care about winning for the Suns now? Like, that'd be headlines everywhere. That'd be a major tampering violation to be in the middle of a game and get offered a trade from your agent from another team, whatever it is. And that even happened with Kawhi, and a whole lawsuit came out of it, and there was issues with that, where the Clippers were already trying to get Kawhi while he was with the Spurs before going to Toronto and before Kawhi got injured. They were talking to Kawhi's manager and everything else when they weren't supposed to be. And that became a huge deal for a while. That made headlines. So the fact that someone can enter the transfer portal while in the game is crazy to me. And that isn't even discussing the huge event that everyone brings up, which is it's just vulturing the smaller teams, right? And I saw somebody compare it to capitalism and things like that, not to get like political, but they talked about in the real world, these, if there's a huge, massive employee that's doing great work at a small company, these bigger companies like Google, Facebook, or Meta now, um, these other big, massive FANG companies that they're called, which is Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google. Um, they're going to poach the employees of these smaller companies in Silicon Valley. And that's exactly what's happening in basketball now. These huge teams are now taking from the smaller teams, and it's just going to make the trend of these number one seeds or these higher seeds continue to win. And it takes the entire fun out of March Madness and college basketball, because madness is in the name. The whole fun of March Madness, and the whole reason I play it, the whole reason why thousands, millions people play it, is because it's to expect the unexpected. It's to have that like team, that 16th seed, that 12th seed, whatever it is, that you just know has the heart of the team that's going to win over all these bigger seeds. It's not about the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog, etc., etc. And that's the beauty of it. That's what brings the madness to March. But whenever you have this transfer portal situation, you're just elevating these higher seeded teams and just passing them along throughout the bracket, and it completely takes the joy out of it. And yeah, it's you're just giving all of these higher seeded teams and more of a free pass, and it's only going to continue until they provide a solution. And the thing is solutions have already been provided, but they're just not being taken. I saw somebody compare it to the soccer system, where the higher seeded teams or the more major leagues of soccer can take players from the lower teams or the lower seeded teams, but in return, there has to be a cash compensation. And even the NBA does the same thing, where if a trade happens, you have to give cash incentives some of the time. And something like that needs to happen as well, so that these massive colleges that have all of this money don't just take from the smaller colleges. And I talk a few times on the podcast about how sports affects the real world and vice versa a lot of the time. Like, a lot of times in life, we think of things being in their own separate categories, right? We think of, sports being over here, music being over here, my 9 to 5 job being over here. We have all these different plates or all these sort of circles in our lives. And we don't stop and think about sort of the Venn diagram that gets created between the spider web of just what life is, what the world is, especially with things like the internet and everything like that. I'm not trying to get existential on you guys, but one thing can affect another thing, which affects another thing for infinity, right? And with this transfer portal situation and these bigger colleges taking the smaller colleges' players, it means that the smaller colleges and the bigger colleges as well are going to be more incentivized to produce money in order to keep players or gather players. But money doesn't just come out of thin air. And what that means is that these smaller colleges, if they want to put more of a focus on basketball, funnel more money into sports to keep their players, that means it's going to take money out of other programs. It can take money out of, again, the arts, like things like music, things like theater, whatever it is, take away other scholarship opportunities for other people that may need it in order to funnel it into sports scholarships and sports contracts. And I don't know, it's just, again, it's going to affect the other side of college and the other side of the world in general. And that's disheartening to see. And I'm not a professional athlete by any means, but I want to go back to the whole loyalty thing, which I'll go ahead and make that the code for this week. Not to go on a tangent, but loyalty 25 is going to be the code for this podcast episode. Use loyalty 25 to get 25% off of your order of the merch. It's going to be good until the next podcast episode. And, it goes with the theme that I'm about to talk about. And also, you buying the merch shows loyalty to me and shows that you support me in the channel. So go and use that code. It's going to be posted on my Instagram and Twitter, all that. But with loyalty, I'm not a professional athlete by any means, right? And I know that this is completely different from my situation, right? But I feel like the transfer portal has made it so easy for players to just abandon everything that they've built for their team, for their college, for their locker room, right? Because signing day used to be a huge day, like, before. I remember, like, being in high school, being in college, being in middle school, even. And these huge players, it was a big deal that they were going to have, I'm sure you've seen it. They made a deal about it even in movies like The Blind Side, where you have the 3 hats in front of you. And these athletes that are big enough, they make like a media show about it where you have to pick one of the 3 hats, and that is the school you commit to. And it wasn't even that far back that it was still a thing. I remember the most recent I remember before this whole transfer portal situation ruined it was Chet Holmgren. Chet Holmgren, he had the choice between Gonzaga, I think Duke, and one other team. And he signed to Gonzaga. And again, it was a big deal that, again, he had, metaphorically speaking, the 3 hats laid out, and he picked the Gonzaga hat. And now, with the transfer portal, I don't see any of that signing day media stuff. And I don't think it's ever going to happen again because there is no commitment to it anymore. There's no sort of symbol of commitment anymore. Chet Holmgren now, if that were to be today, like if he had been 3 years later, 2 years later in college, then he could have picked Gonzaga, and then Gonzaga loses, and then he just signs to Florida, transfers in the transfer portal to Florida, who won the championship. And so it's like, who cares who you sign with your first year now? And that's disheartening, and it also leads to less exciting basketball on the other side of that as well, where not only is it no more madness to March Madness, where these number 1 seeds and these higher seeds are just simply moving up, but it decreases the competitiveness as well. Because, again, I already talked about, like, if you enter the transfer portal during a game, after a game, or you have a plan to enter the transfer portal right after a game, you're not going to care to win because you know you can just leave anyway. But it's also the fact that for the longest time, college basketball, March Madness, the national championship, players used to play hard because they knew that winning that championship, doing well in the tournament, was going to be their chance to maybe become pro. Maybe an NBA scout sees them and they get drafted into the NBA. And that used to be a huge thing. That's why I love March Madness and college basketball, because the players actually try. They play defense. They make plays. And I've done rants on that before where college basketball is much different from NBA basketball because I see that there's more effort put in. To me personally, I see much more effort put in on the college side than the NBA side. And now with the transfer portal, all of that is going to be lost. It's just, yeah. It's going to be completely lost. And I joke sometimes that you can take a drink every time I say the words team chemistry on this podcast. But that's non-existent in college basketball now. Because, again, not only are you abandoning your college, but now you're going to a completely different college, a completely new team, a different college culture, and all of that. And you're just completely abandoning the old team. You're going to have to reconnect with all of your teammates and just completely restart. And it's so easy for players to do that, which is why I'm making a big deal. And the reason I said, to circle back around to why I said, I'm not a professional athlete, so I know it's different, is some of you long-term fans already know this or should already know this. Some of you newer fans most likely don't know this. I transferred colleges while I was in college. And again, I'm not a professional athlete, but that was a very difficult process. I had to apply to my new college. I had to give the transcript from my old college. I had to do all this paperwork. I had to put why I wanted to transfer colleges. I had to figure out what credits were going to transfer over, if I was going to have to do an extra year because some credits didn't transfer over, et cetera, et cetera. And I was basically like begging and praying that I was going to transfer schools. Not because I hated my old school, but just because I knew not because I hated my old school, but because I knew this new school, was going to provide a much better opportunity for me and be much more exciting and everything like that. And it was. It's where I graduated from. It's where I met a majority of my college friends. It's where I met my girlfriend, who I'm still dating, which we're going to be dating for 2 years here soon. So, again, that shows you that I met basically the love of my life at that college. And, that was a huge move for me. And, again, not to say that I hated my old life, or my old college, sorry, because I met Fernando, who started this podcast with me and everything, but it was just, I knew a change had to be made, and I had to go through this massive process. And through that massive process, you sort of sway the pros and cons of like, do you really want to transfer? Is it worth all this paperwork? Is it worth this massive change? And also just the fact that you basically have to, just like being accepted into your dream college in the first place, sort of just cross your fingers and hope. Versus with the transfer portal, everything is streamlined. It's like as soon as a player wants to go to another college, they pack their bags and they're on their way to that college, right? And it's just made so simple. And I want to pull out the numbers for you guys because the numbers, I think, will make an impact. I'm going to put this graphic on screen as well, which is where each of the Sweet 16 starting five started. With Auburn, there's only one Auburn player that started at Auburn. With Michigan, not a single Michigan starting five started at Michigan. Ole Miss won again. MSU actually has 4 of their starting 5, luckily, that started at MSU. Florida, who won the national championship, started at Florida. Maryland, you have 2. Texas Tech, you have 1. Arkansas, you have 1. Again, Duke, because it's already a blue blood, has 4. Arizona, you have 0. Again. BYU, you have 3 because, again, it's a lower seed. Alabama only has 1. Houston, who was in the Final Four, had 3. Purdue had 5. Kentucky had 0. And Tennessee had 2. So, again, that's a visual representation of how many of these players are just getting scooped up. And I saw some players that have been shown that they were making a big deal about it on ESPN, on NCAA, everything like that. That, oh, this women's player is one of the first women's players to make it to the Final Four with 2 different teams, with 3 different teams, or whatever it was. And then same thing with the men's. They had shown 1 or 2 men's players that had made it to the Final Four with 2 different teams. And with the men's, that's happened in the past. With the women's, that's happened as well with Tracy Waiters. But it's going to start happening more frequently, and it's going to start becoming a problem that, this was a massive, this was a news article and a headline during March Madness. For the first time in a while, or the first time ever, this player made Final Four on 2 different teams. That's going to start happening with like 10 different players every year at this point, which, again, is showing to the problem. But to give you the full empirical data rather than anecdotal stories, it's said that in just March 28th was a little bit after the transfer portal happened, there was 595 women's players entered in the first 24 hours, which is 2.5 times more than the 233 players that entered in the first 24 hours last year. And that was 757 in the first opening 24 hours this year. So if we look up how many players are in NCAA basketball, we can take a percentage. So about 20,000. So about 1,000 out of 20,000 entered the transfer portal within just the first 24 hours. So that's, take that fraction, you simplify it down, that's 120, or 1 over 20. That's only 5%. Now, 5% may seem like a low number, but you have to remember that's in the first 24 hours. I looked up the percentages later on, and what I saw was they were reporting 20% of players had entered the transfer portal for men's. And some other reports were showing that it was as high as 35%. That means over a third of rosters were completely changed, were in the transfer portal. And with Indiana, I think was the college, I believe, the entire roster was gone. We're having colleges completely change their roster, or have, again, over a third of teammates leave. And that shows you how big of a problem it is. This is not us old heads, even though I'm only 23. It's not us old heads sitting up on the porch, shaking our cane, saying college basketball is being ruined by the transfer portal, and it's this massive conspiracy like other sports takes has been. The empirical data shows how big of a bombshell, how big of a problem this is, that 35% of players at the end of the tournament are, as of April 10th, I think it said, 35% are in the transfer portal, which is crazy. Something needs to be done. It's going to kill college sports, and it's as simple as that. There needs to be some sort of cap that's put on it. There needs to be some sort of better system. I know that the NCAA just worked out a bunch of new contract deals, new players association deals, everything, which is why they can make NCAA college games again, why the transfer portal exists, why these college players are getting paid contracts and everything. But it needs to be reworked somehow because it's just out of control. Again, there can be a different system in place like the way soccer does it. I don't know what the solution is. I'm not the person that needs to make that decision because I am not at the head of the administration of the NCAA and everything. But I am smart enough to point out with the numbers that there is a problem going on and it needs to be solved. Because if it doesn't get solved soon, then it's only going to get bigger and we're going to see the damage that this can do. So, with all that said, I told you guys that I was fired up about March Madness, and we also did the NBA playoff predictions, all that. So I think that's all I got for this episode. Let me just check my notes, make sure I did not forget anything, and if I did, then I'll go into it. But I don't believe I did forget anything. Okay, yeah. So with all that, I'm going to go ahead and end the episode here, guys. Again, join the Discord, follow me on my socials in the description, go buy the merch, all that good stuff to support me. Use the discount code that was mentioned in this episode, which is loyalty25 for 25% off of your order. That'll be good for 2 weeks up until the next podcast episode where we have a new discount code. And with all that said, I hope you guys appreciated this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, all that good stuff. Let me know if you agreed down in the comments. Share this video around, like it, all that good stuff. Subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out. Nathan Bennett, episode 78.